What is up everyone, and welcome to some more F1 24 League Racing, and we are here for round number 5 of Season 4 of the Streams & Co VRL. Last time out we were at the Italian Grand Prix and we had a pretty good time of things there. It should really have been a podium or at least a top 5 for us, but unfortunately we incurred quite a lot of time penalties. It was pretty rough in that regard, but I'm hoping that this should be a much better race for us and hopefully we'll be able to score points for the 3rd consecutive race here in Canada. So we're out here in qualifying for the first time at the Canadian Grand Prix, and yeah, we're just trying some new things, seeing what we can do, messing around with the setup a little bit. Obviously not too much, because once we commit to a setup we have to stick with what we've got for the most part. But yeah, just you know, trying to get out there, get a feel for the track. I did you know, many practice laps in preparation for the race beforehand, so I'm hoping that things should go well. And a 1:10.5 put me P7 initially, but I definitely know that I've got quite a lot more time in that lap, so yeah, perhaps unsurprisingly I'm now improving on my second flying lap by almost 7/10 of a second as we make our way into the final chicane. Unfortunately I hit the DRS just a tad late there and lost close to 1/10 of a second coming into the DRS zone, but we managed to make up a little bit of time coming through the final chicane as well, so it ended up being about a 6.5 improvement. A 1:09.8 puts me up to P5 for the time being, just behind Clifford and McLean, but I would imagine that quite a lot of people are going to be improving before the final lap of the session. So when we come round on our final lap of the session, you can see we're down in P8, and I think there's still a few people left who are on flying laps behind me as well. We're improving by about 1/10 of a second, but I think that's probably only going to be good enough to put me ahead of Ollie Matthews. And unfortunately we go just a tiny bit too deep into the final chicane, and yeah, went over the track, lost time anyway, so even if I hadn't gone over the track that would have been the end of my qualifying run there anyway. So a 1:09.889 is going to be my final best time here, and at the end of the session that is going to be good enough to see me qualifying in P11. Wow, quite a few people actually improved at the very end of the session there to knock me down to 3 places after I'd crossed the line. But here is your top 10 in qualifying. It's Bjarni from Phil, from Jake, from Clifford and McLean in the top 5, and then it's Ollie, Lewis, Grizzly Bean making his debut today, Ryan and Costa, and then the rest of the grid is myself, Jermaine, Carl, RC, KK and Mike. So yeah, just 0.02 of a second off of Costa there. If I'd managed to get that 1/10 improvement down, we could have been looking at potentially P10 there, but I don't know if I really had much more time in the lap than that, or at least I couldn't identify where it was if that were the case. So yeah, we're going to be doing a medium hard, and we'll see what we can do as the lights come on. And the lights go out, and I think we've gotten away pretty decently there. Not really particularly spectacularly compared to anyone else, but I at least don't think we're going to be losing any positions off the start. Thinking about going for a move up the inside of Jermaine, but obviously he has that, not Jermaine, sorry, Costa. Jermaine's behind me at the moment, but yeah, Costa had the outside line there, which meant that he had a little bit of a better run through the corner than myself. So as we make our way through the first sector, you can see that we've held position in P11 for the time being, but you know, it's a long race. I think my target here is going to be maybe sort of P7, P8, something like that, and we'll see whether that comes to fruition or not. And yeah, we're just going to see if we can get ahead of some of these cars in front. I'm not really sure about the pace of some of the guys, as we get our first track limits warning, so we do have to be very careful. I will be very surprised if we can get through this entire 35 lap race without a track limits penalty, because Canada is notoriously bad for it. Pretty sure most people will end up getting at least a few 3-second penalties, if not, you know, maybe even more than that. But yeah, the likes of Grizzly Bean, the driver here in the Aston Martin, standing in for Anto, who's not here today. I was wondering what kind of pace he would be showing in particular, because I've not raced with him beforehand. Right now, maybe he seems fairly close to my pace, maybe a little bit faster if I had to guess. And yeah, we're kind of just stuck in a bit of a train right now. There's not really a good overtaking opportunity here, so we just have to make sure that we're as consistent as we can be, otherwise we're going to be potentially losing some positions to the cars behind. You know, it's imperative I don't make any mistakes or anything like that, because they will almost certainly be punished by the train of cars that is forming up behind us. And yeah, we're going to see if we can go for a move up the inside of Costa here into the hairpin. He goes a bit wide, but unfortunately Ollie had also had a bit of a moment there, which meant that I couldn't really capitalise as much as I would have liked to, because I couldn't send Costa quite as wide as I would have wanted to, because that would have been sending him directly into the side of Ollie, which I didn't really think was fair to pinch him in there. We brake it just a tiny bit too deep into the final chicane, hit the back of Costa, and that cost me a lot of time, which means we're now going to be losing out to potentially both of the Red Bulls here, certainly Jermaine, and I think RC is making his way through here as well, late on the brakes from the Red Bull driver. And yeah, that was a bit of an error in judgment from myself, but I feel like they just braked a tiny bit earlier than I was expecting. We've made up one position there as we make more contact with RC there. I'm very lucky not to have a damaged front wing right now. That was absolutely on me again because I didn't brake early enough. I think McLean lost position earlier as well, and I think maybe Carl Nelson hit us up the inside. So despite everything that's happened, we are now back in P11 despite behind Costa, but I think we're going to be losing out to McLean very soon, who is going to be very late on the brakes up the inside here, and yeah, just completely shoved me off the racing line, because apparently that's legal, which I don't really understand how that's okay, but it was happening to me all race, and there was nothing that could be done about it. So yeah, expect to see that happen more than once today, as Costa picks up a 3-second time penalty there, and now we've got to try and do what we can to sort of stay within the 3-second range of him, to ensure that we can beat him at the end of the race. The same with Jermaine is true as well, as I think McLean actually got tagged by Jermaine there, and that's going to allow me to get back ahead of the Scotsman and back up into P11 once again, with Jermaine now in front of me here. And yeah, we're going to see if we can get ahead of Jermaine nice and quickly. We out-qualified him quite significantly, but this track is very, very difficult to overtake at, because you do just get caught in these DRS trains, especially if your opponent is running a more sort of top speed focused setups, because there's kind of two schools of thought here in Canada on how you can go with your setup. You can either go a bit more cornering focused to try and get the best sort of exits from the corners that you can, or you can go a bit more top speed focused, and I think Jermaine has gone a bit more top speed focused, whereas I've gone a bit more cornering focused. So yeah, unfortunately it's going to be very, very difficult for me to get ahead of Jermaine, because there's not really going to be a moment where I'm going to be in a position where I can get past him with the DRS, especially when he also has DRS to Costa in front. As I get my second track limits warning there, I definitely went over the track there, you'll see it flash up. Yeah, there we go. There was no way I was getting away with that. I knew it pretty much as soon as I went over the track there. But yeah, it was just immensely frustrating, the situation we're finding ourselves in now, especially because with the best will in the world to Jermaine, he was driving a lot worse than I was. Certainly a lot slower than I would have been had I been in clean air. Some of the defending he was doing was very, very questionable in my opinion. Felt like he was kind of driving his normal line and then seeing that I might be about to get past him on a particular corner, and so kind of cutting off the line that I was driving, which really doesn't feel very fair at all. But that was happening quite a lot, which you'll probably see more throughout the race, as well as you can see McLean got ahead of me there, but I think Ollie came into the pits there a little bit early on lap 6 there, so I'm just wondering if maybe he got some damage or something like that, as we have a bit of a moment there through turn 2. We just got a little bit too far onto the curb, I think, as Costa's had a big moment there, and unfortunately I think that is going to be the end of his points hopes today, but maybe we will see him bounce back in the race if there's some sort of safety car or something like that. Now the motive has to be to try and stay behind Jermaine as best we can, and you can see on lap number 10 there is a safety car, and Costa is out of the session, so much for him catching up due to a safety car. He's actually going to be the one bringing it out instead. And yeah, we're going to be coming into the pit lane. Unsurprisingly, we're going to be going onto a set of hard compound tyres to the end of the race, 25 laps. It's a little bit longer than I was planning on doing. I think we were planning on boxing about lap 13 or 14, so it's not too bad. We definitely will be able to make it to the end. Jermaine currently on 9 seconds worth of penalties, but he won't get held in the pit lane because you only serve pit lane penalties if they're 5-second penalties or 10-second penalties. So yeah, all of those 3-second penalties will sort of stay with him for the time being for cutting the track and that kind of thing. So yeah, we're going to stay behind him annoyingly. It would have been really nice if we could have got ahead of him. We are going to come out just fractionally ahead of Lewis. Fortunately, I really put my foot to the floor on the exit of the pit lane to ensure that happened, but we're currently running in P5, and despite the fact that we actually picked up a time penalty under the safety car, which I don't even want to talk about how that happened, we are actually on for P4 at the moment, I think, with Jermaine running those 9 seconds worth of penalties. I don't know whether any of the top 3, which at the moment I believe is Harris, Jake Ewell and Ryan McLean, are the top 3. So it'll be interesting to see if any of those guys have penalties as well, as we're kind of all over the shop at the moment. Have a really bad run through the chicane there, and that's going to kind of allow Jermaine to start breaking away here. And if I'm not careful, we're going to be potentially looking at falling out of his DRS range. I don't know what's happened, but there's been a massive injection of pace into Jermaine's driving since he went onto the hard compound tyres. Maybe the medium's really just not working out for him there, I don't know. But either way, I don't think that we're going to be able to keep Lewis behind for very, very long at all. It won't be long before we really will be able to say that Lou passed you, because he is significantly faster than me, currently leading the World Championship by a big, big margin over pretty much the entire rest of the field. Obviously the Season 3 champion as well, so yeah, if I can keep him behind for more than a lap once the DRS gets enabled, I'll be very, very impressed with myself, as Jermaine has broken out of that DRS range. So if anything now, it probably is in my best interests to allow Lewis to go through, which you can see I've done there, and try and piggyback off the DRS from him to try and close down Jermaine in front, who is the person who I would say my race is really with. I don't really think that my race is with Lewis at all. I think he's just a bit too fast for me to really even consider having much of a race with him. But you can see we do have the DRS to Lewis here, so we're going to see if we can try and close that gap to Jermaine, who I think has already fallen out of DRS range of that top 3 pack there of Jake, McLean and Harris. And once again we have an absolutely awful run through the final chicane, and that is going to make us incredibly susceptible to KK here, who I think is going to be able to get through here. We're going to try and race him all the way to the first corner, go around the outside, but we just don't quite have the run around the outside to make that one happen, as yeah, we're going to be down into P7 now. Fortunately we managed to stay ahead of the likes of Ollie and Phil there, but meanwhile I think that was Grizzly Bean becoming the second retirement of the race. He actually retired in the pit lane, which you're not allowed to do before 90% distance in the race, because, you know, that's just we kind of have this thing that's like, well, someone else could have taken your spot basically if you're retiring from the race at an earlier juncture. So yeah, Grizzly Bean picking up a qualifying ban for whenever he next participates in the league. And you can see now as we get towards the end of lap 19 here, Jermaine just going incredibly slowly through the corner, once again braking really, really early. We had to brake even harder to make sure we didn't go into the back of him there. And yeah, we're just doing all right here at the moment. I think P5 definitely on the cards, because KK and Jermaine both are on more penalties than I am, although I did pick up another track limits warning there, so obviously we need to be a bit more careful to make sure that we don't have too many more incidents. I think that was McLean there having a bit of an off, so I don't know who else is in front. Oh wait, no, it was just McLean having an off, wasn't it? Because we're now running for P4 potentially, although I have just been shoved out the way by Jermaine, which has allowed Phil to come through as well, so maybe a bit of sister team tactics coming into play there, I don't know. But either way, Jermaine, I went for a move when the door was open, and then Jermaine promptly closed the door. He argued he didn't do anything wrong there. The stewards felt differently, and he was awarded a 5-second penalty post-race for that. But obviously he's currently on 12 seconds of track limits penalties anyway, so it would be disingenuous to claim that he was really in this fight when I'm only on 3 seconds of penalties. Meanwhile, there's Bjarni behind as well, who's going to try and get through on me here. We're going to try and race him as best we can, but unfortunately Bjarni didn't really feel like that, so he's pushed me off the track, and we've got another track limits warning there. And yeah, he's going to go through on me. We're down to P8. So yeah, so far, because of that reckless move by Jermaine, we're now 3 positions down from where we were, because we lost a position to Phil, we lost a position to KK, and we lost a position to Bjarni, which I argue all of that would not have happened if it weren't for the move that he pulled. So I think it was definitely you know, his fault, and deserving of a 5-second penalty there. And I think he actually did, to give him his due, hold his hands up and say it was his fault as well, as I think Phil there has now got through on Jermaine. Meanwhile, we're coming under a lot of pressure from Clifford in the kick Sauber here. We just need to be a bit careful here, because if we're not careful, we could suddenly see ourselves falling out of the points. There is a train going all the way back to McLean in P11. He's a little bit down on Ollie, but we know how fast McLean can be. Definitely, you know, potential for him to close the gap to us, and probably close the gap to most of the cars in this field. To be fair, he is absolutely rapid, and as I'm recording this, I've just watched him win a race in another league around Suzuka. So yeah, he definitely is made of tough stuff, and probably will be able to sort of fight his way through the field even in these last 13 laps. I think he'll have a very good chance of grabbing some strong points here. So we're currently down in P9. Obviously, Clifford, KK, Jermaine, all with more penalties than me. So I'm pretty confident that we can finish ahead of the majority of these guys, probably get like a P7 or something like that. I think it's definitely on the cards here today, P7, P6, something like that, as we try and race with Clifford through this chicane. Just tried to get a bit bold here, potentially, but I don't think we're quite going to have the overspeed to commit to it through the hairpin. That said, though, we actually are going to pull off the move, but is he going to go for the undercut on us on the exit of the hairpin? I don't know. I think he probably does have the better run here, looking at it, and maybe he's running slightly more top speed than we are. So, yeah. Unfortunately, just couldn't quite make the move stick. I tried my hardest to be as racy as I possibly could there, but we can't lose sight of the objective, which to me, you know, I've seen the way that Clifford races in previous races as well, and I think he may just be a little bit faster. So if he can get ahead of KK and Jermaine, I think he'll probably disappear off into the distance. So really, you would have to imagine that my race here today is with the likes of KK and Jermaine, especially with those penalties. I would like to get ahead of them on track if I can, but I think I should be beating them no matter what. So I think, based on what we're looking at here today, I think the target finishing position is going to be P7 or P8. I think that's going to be probably the maximum that we can extract from this race today, just because it is so difficult to overtake here. And, you know, ultimately, as we pick up another track limits penalty, so now we actually do have to get ahead of KK on track, otherwise we're going to be in a position where we're going to have to finish behind him. Yeah, I think if it was all down to me, it was my own mistakes. As you can see, Bjarni equally has made a mistake there that's caused him to drop back behind us now. Yeah, it was all my own mistakes that's caused me to be in this position in the first place. It was a mistake that I made that allowed Jermaine to make the overtake on me, and ultimately, since then, he's kind of just, I don't know how to phrase this in a way that doesn't sound like I'm attacking him, because it's not really necessarily what I'm trying to do, but he's effectively ruined my race. There's kind of no way around it. He's driven incredibly slowly, and not only that, but also at times has driven in a way that, you know, I think to myself, it's quite clear to me that there's something that he feels he has to prove against me or something like that. So, you know, like I said, he was just constantly cutting off the line that I was driving. Anytime I tried to go for an overtake on him, it didn't really work out particularly well for me. And you can see we made a bit of contact with his rear there potentially, as someone is coming steaming up my inside, shoving me off the racing line again, and holding me up almost a second to Jermaine. I was literally so close to Jermaine, I was touching his rear wing, and by the time we get to the DRS zone, I'm now a full second behind him. So, yeah, I was just getting a little bit tired of people doing that to me at this stage as well. People just not respecting my right to racing room. But again, there was nothing the stewards were prepared to do about it. So as far as I understand that means that if somebody is going to do something like that, it's in my best interests to position my car in a way that causes them to crash into me, because evidently if I just try and allow us to both have racing room, it's just me that gets screwed every single time. So yeah, like I was saying, we've lost countless positions in this race. Primarily that is due to Jermaine, but the reason I was behind him was my own fault, like I said, as Ollie decides to try the impossible on Jermaine there, and unsurprisingly gives the position back. It's very annoying that, because I actually was trying to look for a move up the inside on Jermaine myself there, but Ollie just decided that the brakes didn't exist, and actually ended up giving Jermaine damage there, I think, which is only going to make Jermaine slower, which is probably exactly what we didn't want to happen. But despite that, he's actually managing to stay with the cars in front quite nicely, which I guess is probably because, like I said, he is running a bit more of a top speed setup here, from what I understand, as now Jermaine once again has done the thing I was talking about before, where he just cuts off the line that I'm trying to drive through that corner, and I actually made contact with him, and that forced me off the track that time. So yeah, Ollie now has made his way through on us as well, and he doesn't have any penalties in this race, so I think it's looking like it's going to be either P8 or maybe even P9 for us now, as Jermaine has 21 seconds worth of penalties. Now, his argument as to why he was still racing with me at this point was that he believed that he could get one of his 3-second penalties removed, as Ollie's had a big moment there. You can see I actually saw that crash on live when I was racing in front of me. He just went round. I think he maybe got on the curb a bit too much or something like that. But either way, that's going to probably remove him from the race. I would be very surprised if he doesn't have damage of some description as well. So, yeah, that's Ollie kind of removed from the race now. And, yeah, I genuinely, at this point, what I thought was happening was I thought that Jermaine, as we go for a move up the inside of him, we actually managed to pull it off this time, except I think he's cut the track to try and stay ahead of me there. But I think the game has demanded he give the position back there by the looks of things. So we've actually managed to finally make the overtake on him 29 laps after he overtook me in the race. But yeah, I was pretty confident what he was trying to do was back me up into his teammate behind. And annoyingly, despite the fact that he had that front wing damage, and despite the fact that I have the superior cornering speed to him, and definitely have had the better pace on him, because there are 3 DRS zones around a very short lap at Canada, it's just allowed Jermaine to slingshot back past me, get the DRS, and there is just absolutely nothing I can do. I definitely think being on the top speed setup here today was the superior decision for the race. The cornering setup obviously helping me nicely in the qualifying to get myself up into a position where I was fighting with the big boys, and if I hadn't made that mistake on the final lap, I probably would have been looking at somewhere between 8th and 10th as my starting position. So yeah, all things considered, it's just been an immensely frustrating race for us here today, and yeah, I really do feel like there was more at stake here. I think if I'd been ahead of Jermaine, I probably wouldn't have been able to fight with that top 4 of Lewis, Harris, Jake, and I believe Phil is in 4th at the moment, looking at it. But once again, you can see Jermaine there. You know, he sees the line that I'm going for, and he just drives into the position that I'm looking for. You know, it's some of the most blatant weaving I think I've ever seen. As you might have noticed down the bottom there, I think Bjarni, my teammate, has retired from the Grand Prix again. He's having a really tough run of form at the moment here in Streamers & Co, but I'm confident sooner rather than later he will be able to bounce back and turn things around. But yeah, I think 5th would have been probably where I was fighting for today, had it not been for me being stuck behind Jermaine. So it's really frustrating that I think we're only going to walk away with 7th place. And if he keeps holding me up, it could even be 8th, because he's pushing me further and further back into his teammate at the moment, which, you know, I really was getting more and more annoyed about this. There was no doubt in my mind that it was deliberate at this stage as well. You know, he clearly saw that RC had the 3 seconds of penalties versus my 6 seconds, so I was just wondering whether that was him trying to help his teammate score some points, given that he wasn't likely to be scoring many, if any, points here. As you can see, Carl Nelson is closing that gap. If he can get that down to 18 seconds behind Jermaine by the end of this lap, then he will also finish ahead of Jermaine in the points. And also the other thing to consider is that I think Jermaine is getting another 5-second penalty for an earlier incident with me. We're going to try and dive up the inside there, and we actually make contact with Jermaine there. Now, I made the corner, and there was room on the outside. What happened there was Jermaine deliberately turned into me to try and make it look like that was my fault. So yeah, I think unfortunately that one was more on him than it was on me. It was pretty blatant, and I think you could even see it from his onboard if you were to have a look, as Harris wins the race. Very, very impressive drive from him. I believe that's his first win in Streamers & Co, so big congratulations to him. Jermaine, unsurprisingly, passes me back, brake checks me into the final chicane, and yeah, despite all of that, we are just about going to finish over that 3-second margin to RC behind. KK with the 15 seconds worth of penalties just about finishes behind me as well. It was a bit nervy there with how much we were getting held up by Jermaine, but we were promoted up into P7, which was our final finishing position in the race. So I'm very, very happy with that, and yeah, that is going to allow us to continue holding our strong position in the championship. I currently think we're about P6 or P7 in the championship, so we're doing markedly better than we've been doing in previous seasons. As you can see, here is your podium. It is Harris in P1. I believe it's a Williams 1-2 as Lewis takes P2, and then Phil battled his way through to get P3. I think maybe he finished behind Jake Ewell on track, but I think Jake Ewell maybe had more penalties than Phil did, and so it was Phil ending up picking that final spot on the podium. But yeah, a really good weekend for the Williams, who extend their advantage even further in the Constructors' Championship as well. They have 2 very strong race-winning capability drivers at the moment, and well, I think Harris is just getting better and better at the moment as well, so we'll see how he does. So yeah, it was Jake Ewell in P4, Clifford P5, McLean P6, myself P7. RC got a 5-second post-race penalty, which put him behind KK, so it's KK P8, RC P9, and Jermaine in P10. But that is going to be it for this video. So if you enjoyed, please make sure that you like and subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.